Peter Luger is perhaps the most iconic steakhouse of New York City, but like a lot of American steakhouses with multiple locations, it has an outpost in Japan. I was curious to see if the Tokyo Peter Luger could compete with the Brooklyn restaurant that I was used to. What I found was a steakhouse that was different and frankly better than the original NYC Peter Luger. Today I'm here in the beautiful city of Tokyo, Japan. I'm in the Shibuya area, and for lunch today I went to a restaurant that I'm quite familiar with, but the overall experience was very new and different. I went to the Tokyo location of the famed New York City steakhouse known as Peter Luger. I gotta be honest, I wasn't planning to go to the Tokyo location of Peter Luger during this trip. I mainly want to go to Japanese restaurants, not a restaurant that I can go to anytime back home. However, I wanted to have a special dining experience today, and yesterday I tried to get a reservation. I went through my entire list of Michelin starred restaurants. I checked out all the places that were affordable, that were nearby, and yet I couldn't find a single table open. I looked up spots on my other list of restaurants that don't have a Michelin star, and yet I couldn't get a reservation either. Yeah, of course, getting a reservation at some of these top tier restaurants on a Friday at short notice is gonna be a challenging feat. Even though it is February, probably one of the down months for restaurants. Still, I was kind of surprised that I couldn't get at least one of those spots, but I thought of Peter Luger, and I saw that they had reservations open, so I thought, you know what, let's give Peter Luger a try. Besides, I've certainly been intrigued by the restaurant because I know it is a bit different than the one in Brooklyn. Now, after having dined at the Tokyo location of Peter Luger, I can certainly say that's true, and it's different in a good way. So this was my lunch at Peter Luger. Peter Luger was established in 1887 in the New York City neighborhood of Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Over the decades, the restaurant has remained largely the same, but recently the steakhouse has opened restaurants in both Vegas and Tokyo. The Tokyo establishment is situated within the Ebisu area of Shibuya. While Japan may have some of the best beef in the world, there's an immense appreciation for the American steakhouse. In fact, many notable US steakhouses have locations in Japan. A Peter Luger location in Tokyo seems like a natural fit. The Tokyo Outpost opened in 2021 and was an immediate hit despite opening during the pandemic. I was very excited and arrived to the restaurant for lunch a bit before they opened. The brick building housing Peter Luger definitely looks like a structure that would be right at home in Brooklyn. I also appreciated seeing the sign of the restaurant with the address of the original New York City establishment. Being so far from home, it was nice to see something familiar. At 11 a.m., the restaurant opened their doors and it was time for me to discover what Peter Luger in Tokyo was all about. First, I checked in with the maitre d' and was also able to check my coat, which was certainly nice. I don't believe that the Brooklyn location has a coat room. Even though I didn't check my bag, I was able to place it in a covered bin right beside me. I was seated on the second of the 3-floor restaurant, which was definitely where the action was. The dining room had a sort of theater-style layout, with the open kitchen being the focal point. There was also a bar in the back next to the stairs. The 3rd floor, however, is said to have a calmer atmosphere along with rooms for private dining. There are more private dining rooms on the 1st floor along with another bar. In addition, there's a sort of separate section of the building housing a boutique in which one can purchase steaks, desserts, and gifts. Overall, I love the design of Peter Luger's Tokyo location. The building is massive, and I only got to experience a small portion of it. While I do appreciate the old German beer hall feel of the original Peter Luger, I much prefer the Tokyo location in terms of design and atmosphere. Once I settled in, I began to look over the menu. Just like the Brooklyn establishment, there were some lunchtime exclusives. The classic Peter Luger burger was offered, but in Tokyo, one has the option to customize it a bit more. For instance, you can add blue cheese, grilled onions, lettuce, and tomatoes. While I feel like the burger is probably the best in its classic form, those options are no doubt intriguing. There is also a 1-inch lunch steak, which I don't know what that could be, but it's definitely not something that's offered back in New York. The restaurant also also caters to children with a kids plate, which I've gotta admit looks pretty good. In terms of the main menu, it's fairly similar to the one offered in New York. However, the prices are unfortunately much higher. For example, a steak for two, which goes for 36,000 yen, would equate to about 250 bucks. The high prices are partly due to the fact that the Tokyo location imports their beef from the US. Well, I didn't come to Tokyo to eat imported products I could get back home for less, so I looked at the restaurant's lunchtime prix-fixe menu, which is a feature unique to both the Tokyo and Vegas locations. For 5,000 yen, one gets to choose an appetizer, a main, and finish with coffee or tea. There were also some supplement options to enhance the experience. Next, I checked out the beverage offerings, which included beer, wine, cocktails, along with a decent selection of whiskey. I decided to go with a beer, so I got a glass of Ebisu Black. The drink was solid, it hit the spot and it had a good flavor and mouthfeel. I appreciated the local Japanese beverage offerings compared to the drink list back in New York. And speaking of local, the brewery for that beer was literally located right across the street from Peter Luger. In fact, I went there after my lunch. I explored their small museum and enjoyed another beer in the brewery's tap room. Coming back to my meal, I was presented with the bread as well as the signature Peter Luger sauce. Unfortunately, I was just given a single roll, which was never the case when I dined in New York and instead received a good variety. To be fair, however, I mostly never finish all that bread, but I wouldn't have minded just one more piece. Despite that, the onion roll with the butter I received was solid and just as good as what I'm used to back home. While I was eating the bread, my appetizer promptly arrived. I went with the chopped salad, which contained tomatoes, onions, and bacon. The dish seems to be a sort of take off of what I consider to be one of the most pointless and confounding courses at Peter Luger, the sliced tomatoes and onions with Luger's own sauce. However, bacon solves a lot of problems, and Peter Luger serves great bacon. The result was a delicious dish that I really enjoyed. It was simple, but tasty. The salad was also sweet, savory, and refreshing. The chunks of bacon were of course the highlight, but the other elements balanced things out. Now, I was concerned at first because that didn't look like the largest portion. However, because of the intensity of the bacon, the size ended up being adequate for me. Plus, considering what I chose for a main, there's only so much bacon even I can have in a day. And speaking of the main course, after I finished the salad, I was presented with the avocado BLT sandwich, which was paired with fries. Currently, the original Peter Luger doesn't have a BLT, but it sounds like a natural dish for the restaurant considering how revered the establishment is for their bacon. It certainly looked good to me, and I was eager to give it a go. The sandwich was delicious. All of the components from the lettuce to the bacon were on point. The avocados lent a nice creaminess and tempered the salty intensity of the bacon, resulting in a nicely balanced sandwich. In terms of the bread, it worked, and it was pleasantly toasted. At one point, I added a bit of the Peter Luger sauce to the BLT, and I didn't think that it was a bad addition as it provided a touch of sweetness, but I mostly kept the sauce on the side. Overall, a BLT isn't the most exciting sandwich to me, but when you've got bacon as good as Peter Luger does, it can really take a dish to the next level. I thoroughly enjoyed that for now, Tokyo Peter Luger exclusive. Besides the sandwich, I was also fond of the fries on the plate. Now, I've had the fries before at the Brooklyn restaurant, both when I had the burger and more recently when I tried their steak sandwich, and for the most part, I've liked them. However, the ones at the Tokyo restaurant looked a bit different. They were cut shorter and had a darker color. Flavor-wise, I really enjoyed them. In fact, I felt that they had a stronger and more pronounced taste than the ones back in New York. Together with my BLT, that was a solid main course, but soon enough I was finished and it was on to dessert. Before that, however, I was presented with my final beverage, which I had the choice of either coffee or tea. Normally, I would always choose coffee, but since I was in Japan, I felt like mixing things up and went with the tea. The drink was delightful. It was soothing and flavorful. I believe it was a green tea, and I liked it. Soon enough, I was given my dessert, which was a 700 yen supplement to the prefix lunch menu. I went with the half-size pecan pie. Now, I've had the full-size version of the dish before back in Brooklyn and really enjoyed it. My dessert in Tokyo looked just as good, albeit half the size. Although, while I'm used to getting a large serving of schlag or whipped cream with the Peter Luger desserts in Brooklyn, I instead just got a simple dollop of cream. To be fair, I've never used all the schlag with any of the desserts I've had back in New York, and that seemed like an adequate amount for the size of the pie, which I couldn't wait to try. The pie was delicious. It was just as good as the one I had back in NYC. It was nice and fresh, and both the flavor and texture were on the mark. I was satisfied. Now, I chose the pecan pie because I was limited in my selection with regards to the special lunch menu. However, the main dessert menu is nearly the same as the one back in New York, except for the seasonal pie. I really appreciate the restaurant offering specials like that. In fact, their recent offering of a cherry pie looks fantastic. It wasn't long until I finished my dessert and I was presented with the bill. My lunch came to a total of 7,590 yen, which would equate to about 52 bucks. Plus, and one thing that I love about the Tokyo Peter Luger is that they accept credit cards, unlike the Brooklyn restaurant. Finally, no meal at Peter Luger would be complete without their signature golden chocolate coins. To sum things up, that was a good lunch and a very pleasant experience. So that was very satisfying. I'm frankly quite impressed with the Tokyo location of Peter Luger. I really enjoyed myself. The food was really good, and I kind of feel bad that they don't have the BLT on the New York menu, because that's a dish that makes sense because their bacon is so amazing and a BLT is such a great vessel for it. Even some of the food that I've had a number of times at the New York location, like the fries, they were different, and I can't put my finger on it, but they were better. Now, I do appreciate the atmosphere of the original New York restaurant. I like that old German beer hall vibe, but I also really liked the Tokyo establishment that had more of a sleek, modern steakhouse feel. While I haven't been to the Vegas location of Peter Luger yet, it does seem like that restaurant takes more after the Tokyo establishment compared to the Brooklyn establishment, at least in terms of restaurant design. Overall, I had a satisfying lunch today. I certainly had a fun time seeing the differences between the Tokyo location and the Brooklyn location of a steakhouse that I'm pretty familiar with. While I do feel like if you are traveling to Japan, you really should prioritize Japanese restaurants, but it is your trip. Regardless, that Peter Luger was very good. I certainly enjoyed my time at the Tokyo location of Peter Luger, and I hope to one day return.